Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings NBA fades for Friday, February 26th. The fades video is where we look at guys who we think are going to be pretty highly owned or who are usually pretty highly owned based on the ownership percentages in tournaments, and talk about the reasons why we don't like some of these guys today and why they're not going to be making any of our tournament rosters. Now, remember, you don't fade guys in cash games, so some of these guys might still be able to get you a decent 5x floor, which would be solid enough for a cash game. But these are guys who we don't see having the upside that can go 6 or 7x today and really help you take down a tournament. So let's call up the slideshow and talk about the three guys who we think are top fades for the day. The three guys who are going to be my top fades today are LeBron James at 9,500, Danilo Gallinari at 6,800, and Nick Batum at 6,900. LeBron is in a game where he's favored by 1 point with a 207 total against the Toronto Raptors. We know that the Raptors are a really good defensive team, and they do play at a little bit of a slower pace. LeBron is averaging only 39 points in the 2 games that they've played already against Toronto this season. I think he had 38 and 41, if I'm not mistaken, in the 2 previous meetings. And the thing about LeBron is he has not gone over 5.3x in any of his last 14 games. In fact, in the last 14 games, there's only been 4 of those games where he's even gone over 5x with like a 5x, a 5.1, a 5.2, and a 5.3. Now, again, like I said, he could still be a pretty decent option for you to use in cash games. He might get you to that 5x range, but I don't see LeBron having the 55 to 65 point upside that we would really like to see out of him today in order for us to think he's going to be a solid tournament play. The next guy we're going to look at is Danilo Gallinari at 6,800. He's in a game with a 208 total against the Dallas Mavericks, and Gallo only had 24 fantasy points the first time they've matched up this year. So at 6,800, that would barely be over 3x if that was the kind of return he gave us here today. In his last 3 games that he's played, he's had 24, 22, and 29 fantasy points. So only once in his last 3 games has he even reached a 4x level that would still be well below what we would really like to see out of him. He's still been shooting a lot lately, but the shots are just not dropping, and his rebounds are down, and his assists are almost non-existent at only 1 or 2 per game. If Gallo's not scoring fantasy points, because despite the fact that you would think he'd still be able to rip down a bunch of rebounds, he really hasn't been. He's had a couple 7 rebound games in his last, 5 or 6, but most of the time it's been closer to like 3 or 4 rebounds. Which is just really not something that you can afford out of a guy at the small forward position. There are other guys who are small forwards that are averaging 6 or 7 rebounds a game, and Gallo does have that ability, but for whatever reason, the last couple games and the last couple weeks, he really hasn't been putting up those numbers all that often. So if he's not going to get a lot of rebounds and he's only going to have 1 or 2 assists per game, and he's not going to shoot the ball well where his scoring is pretty high, I don't see any way where Gallo can get us to 34 fantasy points and give us his floor. And I definitely don't see a way where he gets up to 40, 45 fantasy points and gives us his ceiling. So Danilo Gallinari is another guy who I have on my fade list for today. The last guy who's going to be on that list is Nick Batum at 6,900. He's in one of the lower total games on the day with only 204 points expected against the Indiana Pacers. He should wind up with a matchup against Paul George, which is tough for him on both ends of the floor. George is a very good defender, so he's not going to make things easy on Batum. And if Batum has to guard George on the other end, he's going to be expending a lot of energy trying to stop PG-13 as well. Nick Batum has struggled recently in his last 4 games, with 5x being his ceiling, and he's been worse than that in the other 3. Now, he had some games before that where he was going 6 and 7x, and we have seen him have a lot of big games this year. But like I said, the last 4 games that he's went out there, his fantasy scores have been 28, 22, 35, and 25, which is 4x, 3x, 5x, which was his best game at 35, and then 25, which is like 3.5x. The Hornets are getting healthy too, so there's more mouths to feed. Marvin Williams has been playing well. Kemba Walker's been playing well. They have all those guys who were getting big minutes at the 2 and the 3 when Batum was out earlier in the year. Guys like Jeremy Lin and Jeremy Lamb. They're all seeing some time there as well. And they just got back, Big Al Jefferson as well. He's not completely back to playing, 28 to 32 minutes like we had seen him earlier in the year. He's still only playing like 22 to 24 minutes. But again, he's another guy who, when he's in there, they're going to give him the ball on offense. You know, they're going to try to feed him down there in the post, which takes a couple shots and a couple possessions away from a guy like Nick Batum. So at 6,900, we're going to need 35 to see his floor and probably 44 to see his, 6x upside for a tournament. And based off the way he's been playing lately, the low total here and the matchup that he has with Paul George, I just don't really see him being able to, get us those kind of numbers today. So those are the three guys that we're looking at to fade. Now, remember, these are guys that we're going to be fading in tournaments. You don't fade guys for cash games. Tournaments is usually where you look to try to fade guys and go a different way. A lot of these guys are small forward eligible today. And, we gave you a couple really good small forwards that we like in our, guys that we are willing to play today. Guys like Rudy Gay at 65, guys like Matt Barnes at 54. I think there's a lot more upside, a lot more bang for your buck by using some of those cheaper options today than it is to go up and spend up on some of these guys that are, a little bit more expensive and haven't really been producing all that much lately. So thank you guys for joining us here for our DraftKings NBA Fades video over at RotoCurve. And as always, stay classy, DFS.